891 ABC Adelaide. In the meantime, we are going to talk about the importance of play. And, to be honest, I've never really given much thought to the possibility that there would be somebody who actually teaches how to use play as an educational tool. But that is the case with one of our guests tonight. That is Dr. Jane Webb-Williams, who's a lecturer in the School of Education at the University of South Australia. Hello, Jane. Nice to meet you.
Hello there. Thank you for inviting me on the program.
And also with us is Peter Semple. Now, Peter is a landscape architect. He's with Swanbury Penglaze, is that right?
That's correct.
Also a dad. How old are your children?
I've got an 18-month and a 1 week old.
1 week?
I know.
Wow, that's why you look like that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yes.
And you've designed childcare centres and playgrounds and really design environments in which kids can play.
That's correct.
Yeah. We've kind of and look, our lines are open on this. I'm sure you'd like to make some comment about playgrounds and using play to teach your kids stuff. We've reached. I was saying to Michael Smith earlier, we've reached a stage with playgrounds where they are quite sterile, safe environments. They're not the sort of I know they have to be safe. I understand that. But they're not the same playgrounds that I used to play on when I was a kid. I mean, I was saying to Michael, the monkey bars. You know, it used to be, if you could swing between 3 monkey bars, you had really achieved something. You could feel the sinews of your arms stretching away and things like that. But we have sort of gone to the stage where we do design sterile playgrounds, don't we?
Yeah, we're really, I suppose, it's really since the 1960s, I suppose, that playgrounds, I suppose, the adventurous style of playgrounds have started to get diluted, and there's lots of reasons behind that, but definitely kids nowadays don't really get outside enough to play and have that adventure and to be creative. And I suppose in regards to the safety aspect of it, I suppose the pendulum swung really too far in that aspect, and now kids don't really get any risk benefit, and that's really about kids learning to bruise themselves and learning from those experiences, and that's really trying to set you up for later life, because life's all about getting knocks and getting up again
and realising what is actually going to hurt.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a good point. Now all you get is you climb in something. I had to get in the toy helicopter. Don't ask why. At a playground in North Adelaide the other day, and all I got was used to the smell of urine.
Right, lovely.
Yeah. And Jane, you teach teachers how to use play.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
What do you do?
Well, I work for the University of South Australia, and I teach master's courses and undergraduate courses to education students, so they're students who want to be teachers in Adelaide. And so I teach a course called Developing a Play Curriculum, which is all about how teachers can use play-based learning in the classroom and still adhere to those curriculum frameworks that we use as teachers, the early years learning framework. If you're up to the age of 5, you would, as a teacher, have to look at in your teaching, and the Australian curriculum for those children above the age of 5. So I teach teachers, or the soon-to-be teachers, because it's a first-year course in the master's program and in the undergraduate program. So in 4 years' time, there'll be
So
teachers.
they've already qualified as teachers.
So they're not qualified. Some of them are, actually. Some of them are on the existing practicing teachers who are early childhood teachers who now need qualification. So I have some online, because we do it face-to-face and online. And some of those teachers will be existing teachers, and some will be student teachers, what we call pre-service teachers, that haven't actually taught in the classroom, but they have what we call practicums, where they go out into Adelaide, work with teachers in the classroom, come back to university and have their curriculum courses.
It's all very well to have those qualifications, but I think it takes a certain type of teacher to really have fun with kids, though, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what we're seeing, I think, in Adelaide and in the world in general, is a shift to more formal learning, traditional formal learning approaches, as we get more sort of top-down government directives, outcomes, and it's all about performance in the classroom. We've seen a shift away from play, and as Peter was just mentioning about the pendulum swinging too far the other way, I think that occurs in education as well.
What I think is ironic is we talk now about literacy and mathematical skills in students in Australia having really dropped off, particularly in South Australia, and it's at a time when there's been so much more focus on the way in which we deliver education, or the way in which we educate kids, and parents are more involved in the education of children more so now than ever before. I cannot actually ever remember my parents ever coming to my school. To be honest, it was just off you go to school and learn stuff and do stuff at school, and I came out of it okay. But since parents have got more involved, the standards. Look, there's a generalisation, I realise, but the standard seems to have dropped off.
Yeah, well, they really put parents have, I suppose, really put too much pressure on kids these days. And I suppose, especially in early childhood development, people or society has forgotten how critical play is in those kids achieving the skills that they need for later life. And I suppose nature play is really about creating a platform for kids to try and express themselves and to learn those valuable skills in terms of like social play, where kids can be a lot more creative. And also, I suppose, their cognitive development, which is really about how they learn and retain knowledge. And also, I suppose, the creativity, and creativity is a key thing. And they've done, I suppose, of research in America where they've actually noticed that creativity in kids has declined. Because everything is structured orientated now, and like after school activities are all structured. It's all to do with competition. Schools place homeworks. Parents are time poor. So kids now don't have that free time anymore to get out and, I suppose, be bored and be creative.
It's 16 to 8, 891 ABC Adelaide. We are speaking with Peter Semple, a landscape architect, and Dr. Jane Webb-Williams, a lecturer in the School of Education at the University of South Australia. And our lines are open. In fact, if you put your headphones on, Lydia's on the phone. She wants to have a quick chat about this. Peter, I'm going to ask you in a minute if you were to design the perfect playground, what that would involve. And look, our lines are open. You might have some thoughts on this. 1300 222 891. Hello, Lydia. I haven't heard from you for a long time.
Good evening to you and to your guests. I'm looking forward to the discussion you're going to have. But 5 years ago, I finished 41 years of teaching, and I loved every year of it, except perhaps the last couple of years when we had major behaviour problems. But nevertheless, I think play, singing, and sense of humour go all together. And the children are very lucky having these big ovals, or most of them. But in an International Observer or International Express English paper, they had a survey, and they asked 12-year-olds, 25 questions, what they missed the most. And on top of the list was climbing a tree, and I think 12th was catching tadpoles in a pond. Yeah. And I came, and just to finalise it, I came home about a month ago, and we've got lots of street trees, and there's this young chap, 12-year-old, climbing a tree, and he hid from me, and I went to him, and he I think his heart pounded, and I said, did you enjoy climbing a tree? And he said, yes. I said, remember it, young man, when you grow up and have some children, make sure you have trees for your children.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening.
Yes, very well.
Lydia, thank you so much for calling. Happy Christmas to you. So I think that's a good point. I mean, singing and laughing, that's part of play, isn't it?
Oh, totally. I mean, I think she's absolutely correct about what goes on in the classroom now, and I think there is a momentum that's been occurring in the classroom where teachers are starting to understand the benefits and the value of play. And if we just think about symbolic functioning, for example, where a child might think about a box becoming a spaceship. We all know, I have 3 children of my own, if you buy them as a present and they unpack the toy, within 5 minutes they're playing in the cardboard box.
In the box.
And they're not taking any notice at all of the toy, because the toy has a limited range of, it's very closed activities that can be...
It's very literal.
Yeah. And as Peter was saying about the creativity, imagination, those sorts of skills are not developed in those sorts of toys. So within symbolic functioning, which is a real way that children learn their language and literacy and their spoken word. If you think about words, we always think about art and the written word, the spoken word, musical notation, mathematical symbols, for example. And we have to assign a meaning to that symbol. And that then allows us to use that symbol as a vehicle of transmission of knowledge and sharing meaning. If a child develops that through play, because they can say, this stick I've got is now a wand. So they're understanding that something represents something else. And researchers have looked at that aspect of play, and really they advocate that as a better way of learning language than the more formal approaches.
It's 12 to 8, and we'll take a couple more calls. Just a quick comment from Beck. In the cartoon strip Calvin and Hobbes, Calvin has a box called a transmogrifier. It turns into anything he wants, and her 11-year-old son wanted one the moment he saw it in the cartoon. Lorraine's on the phone at South Plimpton. Hello, Lorraine.
Hello, Spence. Glad to see you out the red car.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying your...
Monique's in the big red car, and I've let her down a couple of times this week. I've been bad to Monique.
I'm passionate about children's playgrounds. Absolutely passionate. When I grew up, my grandparents lived at Stirling, and they had the most beautiful playground across the road, and they had a big bell that was like an iron petticoat, and it was well designed. There were ball bearings at the top, and it was the most sociable thing that you could have in a playground.
What did you do with it, Lorraine? Did you play it?
No, for goodness sake, Spence. It was enormous.
Oh. Why are people telling me off tonight, Lorraine?
No. It was a massive steel rod.
Yeah.
And you imagine in the olden days, a petticoat that had wires through it.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
Southern Queens.
It was a climbing thing.
No. It had... it was a big pole in the middle, and it had wires, big rods coming down, but they had a seat around the whole circumference of it.
Right.
And you pushed it around, and it swang, and, you know, you could sit on the seats, and it never went to the pole that it would smash your knees or do anything because of the ball bearings up the top.
Okay.
And when I moved into Everard Park, I was delighted to see one of these great big things, and it was, you just sit on it and you talk to your little friends and everything, and you push it around. You can push it in and it goes out, but it never, ever hurts you. Ever.
Huh?
And at Everard Park there were seesaws, and all the seesaws are gone now.
Oh, no.
They are. They're all
not.
gone.
Why?
Oh, because it's dangerous.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Lorraine, look, thanks for the call. I've got to get a comment from Peter about are seesaws dangerous, Peter?
Well, unfortunately, it all comes down to how you interpret the Australian standards, and it all comes down to the maintenance as well in those. And I suppose there's limitations in terms of council budgets, which unfortunately is a reality of a lot of the provision that you see in the parks. And a lot of your local parks, there's a hierarchy, and I suppose councils tend to put the most exciting and prominent equipment in the neighbourhood and district parks, which aren't always within walkable distance of everyone else, and the local parks are really left with a swing and a slide. And yeah, I suppose councils for a lot of years have taken the easy option and picked equipment out of a catalogue, because I suppose that's meant to come with a bit of security, and it also covers them in terms of liability to a certain degree.
9 to 8. Hello, Margaret.
Hello?
Hello. Now, you are an advocate of play as a learning tool, are you, Margaret?
My word, yes. I've based my adult career, which I became what was called the play lady, on my early childhood learning from my teacher in primary school.
Right. So you had a play lady, or you were the play lady?
No, I became a play lady. But
Really?
my teacher in my school when I was a youngster in Scotland, introduced all sorts of activities and was perceived by our parents as play.
Wow.
But they were learning tools.
Okay, and so that was actually part of the curriculum for you, Margaret.
Well, we went out into the woods and we gathered different things, and we took them back into the classroom, and we created things out of those things that we'd gathered. And I remember us having a sand tray, and we built villages and had trees and all sorts of things in the sand tray. But we learned such a lot from gathering the material to
and it's obviously left a very strong memory for you. Margaret, look, thank you.
Oh, my word, yes.
Thank you so much indeed. And look, that would be music to your ears, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes, I can give Margaret a job, I think.
What's old is new again.
Absolutely, and absolutely, because as Peter mentioned right at the beginning, the pendulum swings far too the other way, and we're now getting learners in the classroom that are completely disengaged with learning. They lack motivation, they lack any type of effort or sustained sort of persistence on tasks in the classroom. And that tends to go to the children who struggle the most in the classroom, are the children that think they're failures. And I think at the age of 5 and 6 to be told, because of you're not achieving a particular outcome in a classroom, that you perceive yourself as being a failure is something that should just not occur. And my research really looks more at the social and emotional benefits of play and how it really helps with children's relationships with one another, their relationships between in terms of sort of conflict between different people, sorting out those social role taking, all those things that children squabble over. They have to do that themselves.
It's got to happen.
Yes, exactly right. So I'm really glad that Margaret really was talking about play in primary school, because that's what we've done at Uni SA for the first time this year. We've actually are teaching play to the teachers of the future in primary school education. And we've got some really great pockets of excellence occurring in Adelaide at the moment, where junior primary classrooms are using the outside, just as Margaret suggested there, actually outdoor classrooms, and that they are looking at the nature, they are building cubby houses, they are making little dens, they have got sand pits with water so they can make mud pies, because it's only limited to their imagination. And as long as the teachers understand that they can still attain the particular outcomes of the curriculum, then it's really a benefit.
We do have a terrific outdoor school in the Adelaide Hills. I'm sure you've been there.
Yes.
Peter, we're only about 5 minutes away from the news. I wanted to ask you, if you were designing a playground, I mean, we can all see, the rubber-floored, plastic slide, half swing sort of thing. If you were designing a playground now, what would be the must-include things as far as you're concerned in a playground?
Well, I suppose there's sort of 3 key areas that we sort of like to tick off in terms of the developmental sort of aspect of it, and that's where nature play is really sort of focused on, and that's sort of your gross motor and fine motor. So gross motor is really your big bones, your big muscle parts, and I suppose that's what standardised playgrounds do really well. They're really there to, I suppose, drain the batteries of the kids, and they do that quite effectively. But what's happened is all the steps in the ladder are all evenly spaced. All the squares and the space nets are all evenly, and I suppose what in nature play what we try to do is we try to mimic nature, and everything's organic and irregular, and so kids therefore they have to concentrate a lot more when they're climbing, and also we try to create things a lot more wobbly as well, so they're really trying to use their balance, and they're also trying to use different parts of their body. And then the fine motor, which is something that you don't find really that much in a standardised playground, is really getting sort of focuses in on the sort of tactile end of it, the sensory end and the creative end, which is really getting dirty in the mud, building your own mud cakes, playing in the sand, And also, when we talk about introducing water, rather than just having a little splash pad, I'm talking about having a billabong where kids are actually encouraged to get into that water and play in and splash in and get wet and come home with their mums and dads having to wash their clothes.
Yeah, look, and I think it was Margaret who made the point also earlier. I mean, one of my fondest childhood memories is Belair National Park and catching tadpoles.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a good thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to recapture. And unfortunately, with, I suppose, urban planning and spread and densities of houses, those opportunities are quite limiting now. So this is the only real opportunity that we have left to try and get kids embraced in nature.
And look, and this may be a terribly unfair comment, but there's more of a tendency now for families to want to have an immaculate home, for the home to be always clean. And that also limits play, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it does limit play, and you can see where parents come from really in a way that they do want that. But it doesn't mean that something like what Peter's advocating for, which is a nature play area, would allow them the opportunities to do that, you know, in the confines of a sort of a playground, not in the home environment. But I think I really like the idea of a nature play area because of the community. Because some of the research I've conducted here in Adelaide would suggest that children just aren't playing outdoors at all. 75% of the children that I interviewed suggested that most of their time, or all of their free time, was taken up indoors, not outdoors. And part of that is because they don't have a parent that will take them there, or they haven't got anybody to go with. And, you know, we're guilty of it, I know, ourselves, where we sort of model being on the iPad or iPhone at times, and children copy us.
Yeah.
But there needs to be
the electronic babysitter.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Exactly. Hey, I think that's been a very worthwhile conversation. It's just a pity it's probably going to take a generation to actually determine if it's had any benefit with kids' academic standards. I can't help but think that it will. I can't help but think, you know, if we get kids outside and they get excited about play,
and there's no reason why we can't do this in the public realm as well.
Yeah. Look, thank you both for coming in. Really appreciate it. Peter Semple, a landscape architect with Swanbury Penglaze locally, and Dr. Jane Webb-Williams, lecturer in the School of Education at the University of South Australia. Very much appreciated.